Hello,
Yep.
I think we're live. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Leila Abu Leila, the distinguished novelist. She was born in Cairo to an Egyptian mother and a Sudanese father. She grew up in Khartoum, studied in English medium schools, and specialized in statistics at university and received degrees from the University of Khartoum and the London School of Economics. And she became an academic. Leila started writing after she moved in her mid 20s from Sudan to Scotland. In 1990, she landed in Aberdeen Airport with a 4-year-old son, a 2 weeks old baby, and a husband working offshore on the North Sea rigs. Her fiction springs from the emotional and cultural difficulties of this journey, depicting with precision and depth the homesickness and isolation of Muslim immigrants, their everyday hopes as they navigate their encounters and relationships. Leila has also extended the theme of Muslim spirituality and cultural entanglements into its historical settings and from different perspectives. She has lived in Jakarta, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha for some years too. And now her daughter is married to a Pakistani. Now her son, I think, yes,
That, yeah.
sorry. Son is married to a Pakistani. As a novelist, she is the first winner of the Caine Prize for African Writing. Her novels include Bird Summons, which is what we're going to talk about today. Oops, I'm not being very efficient here. We're just coming upside down. Bird Summons, The Kindness of Enemies, Lyrics Alley, which was the fiction winner of the Scottish Book Awards, Minaret, and The Translator, the New York Times 100 Notable Books Award of the Year. Her recent story collection, Elsewhere Home, won the Solfa Fiction Award of the Year. And Leila's work has been translated into 15 languages, and she has been longlisted 3 times for the Orange Fiction Prize. So, Leila, I'm going to begin by asking you how and why did you change your career so completely and start writing? And of course, the experience of migration on your work and all the countries that you've lived in, and so much else.
Yes. Well, it's nice to be talking to you, Muniza. And the reason I changed from the statistics, I guess it was there was a push and a pull factors. One was that I was tried to do a PhD in statistics, and I didn't make it in the PhD. And then the other reason was the homesickness made me a change of my life. This dramatic change of being in Scotland made me kind of like reassess everything, and made me question what I was doing. And then I started the writing. It started as a hobby that I was doing in addition to looking after the children and teaching statistics at the local college. But then eventually I started to take it more and more seriously, and I was encouraged, and so it took off from there.
And because your novel also brings in, other, Muslim, like and Bird Summons, they're all from different countries. So how was your experience of the other Muslim world sort of coming to your work, or other Muslim cultures? And because there's a kind of overlapping also, isn't there?
Yeah, well, when I moved to Aberdeen, to Scotland, and of course I experienced this sense of loneliness. I started to make friends with other Muslims, and I started we started meeting in the mosque, and I would take my children there for the Saturday school. They had the weekend school for the children, and I started to meet other mothers there. So a lot of the women I met, and their children, and their anxieties about bringing up their children, and the teenagers I met there, so kind of fed into my fiction. And so once I, maybe in the first couple of books, once I got all my own personal homesickness out of the way in the early books, I began to be able to write about other people in a more kind of detached and objective way, I suppose. Yeah.
And your Pakistan link, you was last time you came here, was that your first Pakistani visit?
Yes, that was in the March 2019 for the Lahore Literature Festival. And it was my first visit to Pakistan, and I was very, very impressed. I liked it very, very much, very much. And I also went to Multan, which is where my daughter-in-law comes from. And my son and we had arranged that we would all meet there and have the wedding reception. So I had the whole experience of the mendi and the shoe ceremony and all these things that they do, the milk and all these things. So that was very, very nice. Yeah.
And before, I'm just going to come into your book. Were you influenced by any South Asian writing? Was South Asia, Pakistan, something that you were aware of or comfortable of through literature?
Oh, very much. I was always reading a lot, of Indian authors, and I was a big fan of Anita Desai. And I think that Atiya Hussein's novel, Sunlight on a Broken Column, had influenced my own novel, Lyrics Alley, especially.
Really, how lovely.
Yeah.
Well, she's my aunt, you know, so yeah.
Yes, I was amazed to read all about that and the connection between you. And her stories are wonderful too. The Phoenix Fled, that was also a very nice collection. They were both published by Virago. Mm-hmm. And I could really relate to this kind of lifestyle. I remember my aunts, living sort of similar lives where they don't go out, and so that was very interesting, and I could relate to it very, very much. And so it was good to read it. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to do a quick summary of my take on Bird Summons, and then we'll ask you to read a bit from the novel.
Okay.
Bird Summons explores themes of migration, identity, and belonging which permeate the lives of three Scottish Muslim women. And the book is a fascinating intertextual engagement with Fariduddin Attar, with the portrayal of the hoopoe bird who appears before them, particularly one of them at key moments during the unusual journey that the three of them decide to undertake across Scotland to visit the grave of Lady Evelyn Cobbold. She was a Scottish aristocrat who had converted to Islam in 1915, performed Hajj, written a book called A Pilgrimage to Mecca, but lived and died in her Scottish estate. So the journey develops into a really wonderful personal and spiritual quest for enlightenment. And it moves from past to present, from real to the surreal. And it's interwoven with the hoopoe's wonderful philosophic tales. Lala, would you read from the novel?
Okay, so yeah. So I'm gonna start. This is a piece from early on in the novel, and one of the women who's setting out on this journey. There's three of them, but one of them, she left her child behind in order to go out on this journey, and it's her first time to leave her son behind. So he's actually not well, her son, so it's difficult for her to leave him. The son's name is Adam, and she refers to her husband also, who's called Murtada. Adam had not understood that she was leaving him, and she was grateful for that. She now wondered if he cared that he was the only black child, if he even noticed. Sometimes at home, looking into his eyes, she searched for things other than the dull pain, other than the acceptance. The staff had been kind and patient with her. Every medical establishment Moni had encountered through the NHS was full of sympathy and understanding, while all Murtada could say was, "We must behave normally, life goes on." He said this when she was still refusing to have sex 3 whole months after the birth, when she did not want to go back home on holiday. Eventually, they did go to Sudan for Murtada's brother's wedding, but people were so unkind about Adam, so blatantly curious, at times blaming her, it had to be someone's fault, and pitying her that she was miserable. She began to keep Adam not only indoors, but in her room, away from the prying visitors who seemed to be attracted to him as a grotesque curiosity. Before his birth, Moni had been active, positive, and smiling with her high-powered bank job and independence. Murtada had courted her for years before she succumbed. At first, she had not judged him good enough for her and assumed she could do better. It was his own matter-of-fact awareness of this which caught her attention. His blunt, "I know your family is better off than mine. I know you are socially higher, but I will not take a penny from you because that's not why I want you," which roused her admiration. He was a chartered accountant specializing in corporate finance, and they had met when he was securing a loan through her bank. She was impressed and humbled by his dedication to his career and perseverance. His efforts at improving himself touched her. His ambitions for gaining international experience captured her imagination. She wanted a large family, and his instinct to provide, "I will pamper you," he said, "even more than your family pampered you. I will do anything for you," won her over. She loved how he described his very first impression of her on the day they met, bust straining against the tailored jacket she was wearing, her hijab tied slick, the ruthless way she questioned his proposal. This truly was how she had been. Then Adam's birth bulldozed her. After that failed visit back home, she stood up to Murtada. "I will not take Adam there again. I will not take him to those backward fools." Murtada had replied, "These fools are our flesh and blood," but she didn't care. She became one of those women to whom things were clear cut. Everything back there was bad and everything here was good. The more they slept apart, she with Adam and Murtada on his own, the more they disliked each other. Murtada was not comfortable with Adam, and she could not forgive him for this. Just the sight of Adam depressed Murtada. He would gaze at him with bewilderment and dismay. Murtada wanted a cure. He wanted state-of-the-art surgery and strong medication. It took him time to accept that nothing could be done. When he did accept this fact, after an inner tussle and genuine agony, he wrote Adam off. He shelved him. "We must go on and live our lives as fully as possible," he said to Moni. "We must have other children. We must be happy. We cannot let his condition rule us." All this fell on deaf ears. Moni was busy, busier than she had ever been in her life, and more important, "You're a good mom," the nurses said. "You're doing a brilliant job," a job that was hard but encompassing and all-absorbing, rousing all her sincerity and resilience. Looking after Adam, Moni became stronger. Father of a disabled son, Murtada became weaker. So that's it.
Thank you so much. That's such a beautiful passage. And other than the complexity of the relationship, the whole agony and the love involved in having a handicapped child, the writing and the sensitivity and the complexity emotion that it evokes actually, to me, it reflects so much of what else you do in this novel. But what, how did this character evolve, this handicapped child, her love? I mean, did you have to research it? How did you come about? How did it come about?
Well, of course, over the years, I've met so many people. I've been here in, since I left Sudan. It's been 30 years. I've been in the UK, so I've crossed paths with so many women who've immigrated for so many reasons. I've had so many different kinds of experiences. Some of them are, for them, the move was a come down in the world. For many, it was an improvement and a come up in the world. Some of them, stayed at home, hid away at home and didn't want to interact with society. Some of them did. And some of them, as in the case of Moni, when they found that being here helped their children, especially in the case of disabled children, which don't get the care and the support they would back home, they appreciated very much the health care that they're getting in the UK. and they became very dedicated to this life in the UK, and seeing their child develop and seeing their child improve affected them a great deal. So I've seen that in many cases. So I wanted to write about it, and I think I just wanted to write about very ordinary women going on this journey, which is a physical journey. It's a spiritual journey, and it challenges their own the issues they were dealing with, their own kind of struggles, and none of them see themselves as being bad people. They actually all start off as being feeling that they're good women, they're doing the right thing in their life, but then that kind of challenges it. And in the case of Moni, she's very much feeling that she's on the right track. This is what she needs to do. She's looking after her son, and then maybe slowly she begins to realize that it shouldn't have this. She's carrying her son's illness like a burden, and she's proud of it, where she should carry it lightly and move ahead and try and leave a space in life for herself and for her husband and so on. So that's kind of what was going on in the novel, in a way.
Well, that's really interesting. And what led you to Lady Evelyn? And I mean, the whole. I also wondered if you'd actually undertaken the same journey. But tell us, Lady Evelyn.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the British, the Western in general, Western converts to Islam. They've always fascinated me, and I read up a lot about them, over the years. And I think that as Muslims in the West, we carry a kind of almost a sense of shame with being Muslim. It's something that we were born into. It's something that we feel that it's good for us, but at the same time, because of the difficulty, because of the the Islamophobia and so on, we might not we might not feel proud of this identity. And I think what Western converts to Islam do for us is that they give us this kind of almost a sense of support. Like we find it hard in a way to imagine, well, why would you do that? Why would you want to be a Muslim by choice? You're not born as a Muslim. Why would you want to be a Muslim? So in a way, they kind of are inspiring figures and fascinating in a way. And so when I read about Lady Evelyn and the fact that she's a woman, and the fact that she's actually was Scottish, and that her grave, and that she lived and her grave was not very far from where I am. I mean, from my house to the grave is about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, let's say, drive by car. So I became very interested in this idea of taking the women there, as a destination for their journey. Although when I first started the book, to be honest, I wasn't thinking of the Lady Evelyn at all. I was just thinking of the women going on a journey, and the journey didn't really have a particular physical destination. And then after that, I came up with the idea of incorporating the life of Lady Evelyn and incorporating the grave as a destination. And I did try and go there, but it was very difficult, and I actually had to turn back. So yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, I didn't make it.
Well, that was interesting because the journey has all kinds of obstacles. You can't take your car, and she's surprised, and you have to. Someone is there. They've got deer hunting, so you can't go this way. And it was very well built in. I thought in the terms of a spiritual journey. The obstacles that you meet in your quest for self and all that. So it worked very well. Actually, it's true, is it? That's kind of
that part is true.
So the what came first, the hoopoe?
The hoopoe came first, yeah. The hoopoe came first.
How did you hit on that? How did that, he's beautifully built in.
I don't remember exactly because he was so there at the beginning that all my the working title, I mean the titles of the files that I was using to write were called the Hoopoe. And so it was like the
Really?
Hoopoe 1, the Hoopoe 2, and that was the novel. And then when I submitted it to my publishers, they thought, they weren't very happy about the title. And so I thought, oh well, yeah, maybe I could change it to something that could be more appealing, because some people might not know the word hoopoe, but I'm using it in the Arabic translation. So the translation of the book, which is should be coming out soon, is called Al Hudhud in Haka. So it's like the hoopoe Al Hudhud when he spoke is the
Oh, I
Arabic
see. Okay.
translation. Yeah.
Because when he tells tales, I mean, he particularly tells the tales to Iman, who is the one
Yes.
who, she's from Syria, and they thought she was an advantageous marriage, and they got her married off, and the poor woman ends up with 3 unhappy marriages. And she's the
Yes.
one that he appeals to most, and he tells her these wonderful tales. Um, well, the one that I'm going to go on, which one of them is that of Nathan. I think he's a priest who goes to make up for his sins. He binds himself with shackles, in a long story. But in the end, you link that up with the monastery they're visiting. And you say this is from the monastery, and I found that very interesting. The relationship between fable and real life. Can you tell us about that? Or
Yeah, so when I came to the Hoopoe stories, I wanted to kind of like mix the Aberdeenshire folk tales, the Scottish folk tales, with the Eastern folk tales. So the Hoopoe then says mixes the stories together. So he's got this Nathan, who's this is coming from the Scottish side, and the stories of the Selkie and some of the symbolic figures in Scottish folklore, and mixing that with some of the tales that I got from Rumi and from the Kalila and Dimna. And I think it was later on that I realized that, that Nathan could be linked then to the monastery, that the monastery, that they were visiting a monastery, and just for the audience to explain that the monastery in the book has been converted to holiday accommodation, and that's true as well. This place exists in real life, and I've been there a number of times. And so the monastery had become holiday accommodation. And so when the women go, and as practicing Muslims, they kind of link with the past of the monastery. They link to the practicing Christians who lived in the monastery. And I remember watching a program once about where they took some young Muslim teenagers from one of these cities, Bradford or Manchester or something, on a field trip. And these youngsters were looking at cathedrals and looking at the English heritage. And these young people said that they don't feel a connection to this heritage. To them, this countryside and the cathedrals are not connected to them. They belong to the city and they belong to the Muslim faith. And I was really disappointed in that. And I thought that was, it's a shame that they don't, that they can't link themselves to these early believers who worshipped very in an almost similar way that Muslims worshipped a long time ago in these islands. That was one of the things that I wanted to bring out in the novel, to make the connection between the worshippers, the different worshippers, and to bring the connection between the tales and the Eastern tales with the Scottish tales. Yeah.
well, we haven't mentioned the main character. One of the leader of this was. We need to open out to questions, but so quickly, I'm just going to say, and I was interested in Salma, who's actually married to an Englishman, again, who converted while he was living in Egypt. And she has then has having married this British Muslim, she then has this great hankering for home. And I thought that was beautifully done for the world she'd left behind.
Yes, yes, yes. She's another example. She's the supposedly the most successful of the three because she's happily married. I mean, the marriage is successful, and her husband, because he is he's Scottish and he gives her a lot of freedom and he treats her as an equal. But she, because she was a doctor in Egypt, and then when she moved to Britain, she couldn't get her qualifications accepted, and so she had to become a massage therapist. So when her former colleague, who was actually, they were almost engaged, when he first contacts her through Facebook, he addresses her as doctor. He says, Dr. Salma, which they do in Egypt, they use the first name. And so she says to him, I'm not a doctor, here I'm not a doctor. And he says to her, no, to me, you'll always be a doctor. And that kind of like means the world to her, that she's being addressed as a doctor, because that was her original ambition, and she had to give that up and come. And again, that's another example of an immigrant who had to kind of like give up their original work and become massage therapists, as others have become taxi drivers and working kebab shops and things like that. Yeah.
Well, I thought, and it's a great book. And do we have any questions? No, I don't
I
see
think
any
no,
questions.
we don't have yet any questions, so yes.
No questions. Okay, we don't have questions,
Okay.
so we can carry on talking for another few minutes. So it's actually, let's talk about being Muslim in Britain. How I mean, sort of the collective sort of the. It's a very feminist work because it is about women's lives and it's about women in their own country and then negotiating that in and how the two sort of kind of what you spoke about Salma in a way, how it clashes and how you try to negotiate between one thing or the other, between your family demands, between tradition and modernity, between Anglicization. That's another big problem, Anglicization and tradition. Can you comment on that?
Yes, I mean it's a very slow process of how people change when they come, and how at the these immigrants change at different paces and in different ways. And in the case of Salma, what is very striking in her is that her children are half Scottish. And so at the beginning of her, when the children are small, she feels very much that she is in control of these children and that she is 100% their mother. But as they grow older, they move away from her. And she starts to feel that she's losing them little by little to the culture, and they're becoming closer to the father than to her. And that she has almost become the foreign wife. There's a sense of loneliness in the household itself as these children become more British and become closer to their father. And this explains why she's so keen on her relationship with Iman, because Iman, who's a lot younger than her, is like a younger sister to her. And she wants always Iman to be with her, and they go out together because Iman takes away this loneliness, and to her she's like the young sister that she doesn't have. And it's interesting to see how, of course, when in these situations, when people move away from home, they build bonds within the community that they wouldn't have that back home they wouldn't really have built these strong bonds. They would have stayed within the family unit, and in a way they are building bonds outside. But I think,
Sorry, do finish. Yes.
Going to your point about the being a Muslim, it's changed so much. I mean, you see over the 30, when I first came to the UK, nobody even used the word I mean, there was no awareness of people as being Muslim. You were either Black or Asian, and this came quite later on, that suddenly people were being referred to as Muslims, or then as British Muslims, and this kind of like identity started to kind of appear. So in a way that has evolved over time. But if we look back, there's been mosques in Britain for a long time, and there have been Muslims for quite early on, but they weren't really identified as such. They weren't really labeled as such. And then, of course, the war on terror came, and that kind of also changed the dynamics a great deal.
Well, I think our time is up, sadly. But
Okay.
thank you very much. It's been great chatting to you.
Yes,
And
thank
well,
you.
I hope we meet again soon. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you very much. That was nice. Thank you, Munisa.